Hey, it's Liberty, and today I'm going to be tier ranking all of the classics that I have read. Now, I've had to make some exclusions. Nothing by writers who are still alive, no children's books, no plays. Narrowed it down a bit. Also, some of the books that I literally don't remember anything, I've not included because that wouldn't be helpful for anyone. My tier labels for this are God tier, A Good Time, She's Cute, Overhyped, and I'd Rather Watch Paint Dry. I've also, with authors where I've read quite a few of their books, I've only included a couple because, too many. Something that I would like to ask anyone who is watching this is if they have recommendations for classics or really any books that have been translated into English, because I'm trying to read more translated fiction and I could do with some recommendations. If you like this, do give it a thumbs up. I make all sorts of videos about books, history, personality, all sorts. So do check those out if you want. I'm actually going to do this by tier. So I'm going to start with I'd Rather Watch Paint Dry and end with the God tier, but I'll put little sections in case you just want to skip to the best or skip around. I won't be saying too much about each book, so don't worry about that. So I'm going to get straight into it with the I'd Rather Watch Paint Dry tier now. This is for books that I almost didn't finish, I really didn't like, I had big trouble with. There are actually only 2 books in this tier because as a general rule, if I'm having that much problem with a book, I don't finish it, or, if I'm struggling to get into it, I don't push myself. So yeah, there are only 2 books here. If you've seen any of my videos before, it will be quite obvious what these books are, but it is The Professor by Charlotte Bronte. This was reworked into Villette, so canonically it's not even considered to be a sort of fully formed work, I guess. So I don't feel bad about putting it here. And then the other one is Jane Eyre. I'm really, really sorry. I'm not a fan of Charlotte's writing. This has been established, and this novel just epitomises why. I'm honestly going to try and give it a reread this year though, because I did read it a long time ago, and I'd be interested to see, now that I'm older, now that I've read all the Brontes now, if I go back, if I'm going to consider this to be as bad as I thought. I might make a video about that actually. So yeah. The next tier is my overhyped tier, and there's a difference between overrated and overhyped. So I like all of these books. I think they're good. However, I think that society, people in general, give them more praise than they deserve. I've had enough of people saying you have to read this book because you don't trust me. The first one is Brave New World, and it is a sci-fi dystopian novel. Some of these genre books are better than others, and other people have done much better than Brave New World. So yeah, I think it is overhyped, and I think they should stop making children read it in school. Okay, next is Oliver Twist, and it's just my opinion because it is a good book, don't get me wrong, but it is by far from the best Dickens novel, first of all. And it's shoved down everyone's throats all the time. It has become so ubiquitous in culture that, most people know little bits of it or famous quotes from it, but it's just, it's very, very overhyped in my opinion. I'm not going to reread it, and if people ask for a classics recommendation or a Dickens recommendation, I don't reach for Oliver Twist. Next, this might cause some controversy, but The Great Gatsby. I'm not American. I think it might appeal to people more if they are American. It's good. I enjoyed it. Do I think it is one of the best books ever written? No, definitely not. It, in terms of plot or in terms of style of writing, no, massively overhyped in my opinion. Next is Of Mice and Men, and I think we're gathering, there's a pattern here. Again, I think if I was American, this might have stuck with me more. I enjoyed it when I read it, and I took things away from it when I read it, but it didn't stick with me, and it's not something that I loved so much that I would reread in my life. So it's everywhere. It's always on these lists of best novels of all time, and I just, it's fine. And finally, in this tier, Mrs. Dalloway. Now, I really enjoyed this book and I love Virginia Woolf, but it's overhyped. Stream of consciousness is great if you can get into it, and if that's something that you enjoy reading and it's not something that you get tired of or annoys you, but it's not for everyone. And I think it's important that we don't push books too much that are a very specific style, because it can only disappoint you if it's not something that you find you can get into. Yeah, I feel like people shout about this book a lot, and it is good, don't get me wrong, but it's only amazing for a small number of people, I would say. My next tier is She's Cute, and this is a tier for all books that I liked, really enjoyed, would possibly reread again, but I didn't love them. I'm going to start it off with the 2 Jane Austen novels that are in this tier. First is Northanger Abbey, great novel, great debut, you know, coming of age. We've got this naive protagonist. We can see the world through her eyes, you know, it's a very sweet love story. And of course, it's great as a satire of the Gothic novel, and it shows great things to come in Austen's career, but, you know, it's cute. And second is Mansfield Park. Now, I love Fanny as a protagonist. She's an underrated protagonist for sure. But, you know, I hate the romance in this. And yeah, I mean, they're interesting characters and the plot goes along well. Like, you know, I enjoy it. But yeah, I have issues with this novel, and I think it should have ended differently. And I hate the romance. But it's cute. Fanny really saves this novel from being, you know, further down. Next is the Division Bell mystery, and this is cute because it is a nice murder mystery. It's set in the House of Commons, and it's sort of between the wars, and so it's a great time period. It's an interesting time period. You know, the first women MPs. You know, there's a lot to like about this, but it's kind of in this whole murder mystery aspect of it. It's not. It gets quite, you know, the main character isn't as appealing as you need him to be. But I finished it and I liked it and it was cute and some of the characters in it were great. But yeah, narrowly, this is at the bottom of the tier for sure. Next is Where Angels Fear to Tread. I love Ian Forster as a writer. One of my favourite. And this is, like, you know, the lowest you will find his books on this tier list. This particular novel involves sort of a woman's relationship with her in-law family, and, you know, how they feel that her freedom after her husband's death and, you know, to make her own choices, how it affects them and how they get to have a say on her future. There are some really nice characters in here, and they're all interesting, and the descriptions of Italy, I mean, it makes me want to travel so badly. I enjoy it, but I mean, if I was going to reread, I reread A Room with View fairly regularly. So we've got another murder mystery now, which is The Murder at the Vicarage. Miss Marple, classic. Miss Marple books are always good reads, and I never regret picking up a Miss Marple book. And this is no exception. You know, village setting, group of characters, group of suspects. You know, they're all interesting. The relationships between all the characters are great. And, you know, the plot was engaging. So cute. Next is The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I'm not going to lie, this was shorter than I was expecting. It's great. It's really, really great. Everybody knows what it's about, but the joy is mostly in the journey rather than the sort of climax. Although, the plot moved along and it was nice to read it, I don't know that I would reread it, but I still think everyone should read it. Next is Villette, and this is what the Professor was reworked into. And it was good, it was really great in some aspects. Like, the writing was really good. The way that Charlotte describes Brussels in a sort of fictionalized form was really, really great. We had a bit of a passive protagonist, which I found very annoying, and the hallmarks of Charlotte Bronte's writing, which none of which I like, were in here, but it's cute. It wasn't, I had a, I liked it. Next, we've got a little Hemingway, The Sun Also Rises. I love Hemingway, and this novel takes his protagonist to Spain with his friends, where we get to see him experiencing, bullfighting and life as a tourist in Spain. Obviously, they start in Paris, and his collection of friends is interesting, and his relationships with all of them, and because it's very much like a social group, so he doesn't really get on with all of them, and there's a love interest in there. She's very I feel like I've used interesting a lot, but interesting. I don't really know how to describe her. It's an unspoken thing that Hemingway has an issue with women, right? His attitude towards women was not great. And I feel like this novel really sort of epitomizes that because of the way that the love interest is written. However, I love his writing way too much, and that probably makes me a terrible feminist, but you know what? Actually, no, because the whole point of feminism is being able to choose. And I choose to have my reservations, to understand that, to know that, and to go into his books just having that in the back of my mind, but letting myself enjoy it. And you know what? That's my prerogative as a reader. Next is The House of Mirth, and I think if anything inspired Gossip Girl, it was Edith Wharton novels. This is the first of two that I'm going to talk about, and this one is all about sort of old money versus new money, social status and love, and the sort of bounds of marriage, and can you have the sort of status of a married person without being one? It's great. I enjoyed it. It doesn't live up to the Age of Innocence. That is peak Edith Wharton. So I think, this book suffers from the Age of Innocence being so good. Next, we have The Outsider. And this novel is all about failing to adhere to social norms and the alienation of someone who refuses to do that. We love anti-heroes. Anti-heroes are great. And this one refuses to lie, which is intriguing and something I feel like more and more people are resonating with. More and more people are choosing to talk about how they really feel, even if it hurts people. And that can be good, that can be bad, depending on what you're talking about. So it's an interesting read. I personally wouldn't reread it. I think it was an experience I had, and I'm happy I had it, and I would recommend it to people. Finally, we have A Murder of Quality, which is the first Le Carré novel in my tiering system. And Le Carré is just the ultimate sort of spy novel writer. And this features George Smiley, his very, very famous protagonist, and sort of the circus, and obviously we're in the Cold War. This novel is sort of the second in the sort of Smiley series, and it takes us out of London, and there is a body for Smiley to sort of figure out what has happened. The reason it's kind of lower is because what I love about Smiley is the intrigue aspect of it, the circus, basically the kind of Londonish aspect of it, which we don't get so much in this. So next is my A Good Time tier, and this is sort of a place for novels that I loved that aren't quite God tier. The first is The Three Musketeers. I really love this. I think everyone should read this. It's fun, it's historical fiction, we've got great characters, swashbuckling heroes, and France, it's a lot of fun to read. Next, we've got 3 Jane Austen novels. We've got Sense and Sensibility, which is, it shares a lot of features with Pride and Prejudice, but the relationship between the two sisters, who are the protagonists, are the key to this. And, they're very contrasting. There's, it's interesting to read, and the plot is good, and also just the writing is really great. I think this is probably, of the 3 in the list, probably the best written. Maybe, I don't know, maybe Pride and Prejudice, but that's the next one anyway. I get why this is Austen's most famous work, and it is a very good time. It's not quite God tier. There is one Austen that is God tier. Elizabeth is a God tier protagonist though, for sure. And the romance is great. It's a regular reread for me, so Finally, Persuasion's the third Austen on this tier. The fact that these two characters in the sort of main romance have history sets it apart from the rest. And Anne Elliot is a great protagonist. And, I recommend this book very, very highly. And I think had she not died, I think this book would have been revised and it would have been even better because this book was sort of published posthumously. Next on this tier, Agnes Grey. And Agnes is a great protagonist. She wants to get out there. She wants to help her family. She has ambitions to open her own school. The romance in this is sweet. Agnes is a great protagonist. It was a great debut for Anne Bronte and yeah, highly recommend. It's more than cute, so it is in this tier. The ABC Murders is proof that Agatha Christie is just an amazing author. It's one of her really great murder mysteries. Okay, we've got The Machine Stops and sort of all other E.M. Forster short stories, because there's loads. He predicted the internet in this short story, and he just is an amazing writer. And short stories are great because you can really sort of dive into someone's writing without having to invest too much of your time in it, and also they're intriguing ideas for stories that he has. So another Agatha Christie one now, and it is And Then There Were None. This is a great book. Not for me personally. My experience reading it was not great, but that was because of a medical emergency, okay? It is a great book, trust me. One of the best Agatha Christie novels, in my opinion. People are invited onto the island and they end up dying one by one, and it's, can we figure out who's doing it before there's no one left? Next is Little Women. And obviously this is great. Everybody knows this is great. There are great characters and the plot is great, and it just makes me feel very warm inside, but I don't love it in the way that would make it God tier, Next is A Christmas Carol. Everybody loves A Christmas Carol, and for good reason. Treat the people in your life well, don't be so obsessed with making money or you will have no one left and be alone. The fact that we still need to learn this in 2022 is just really sad, but no, yeah. It's immense fun and gives us those lessons, and Dickens just writes so well. Next is Shirley. This was so close to being a Charlotte Bronte God tier, but she ruined it in the final chapter, and I'm so upset and I will never forgive her for that. If this ever ends up being an adaptation, I will find the person adapting it and pay them to end the adaptation before the final chapter. Shirley is a great protagonist, up until the end. And there's so much social commentary in this, and it is just, great. There's so much to love about this until the final chapter. It's so disappointing. And next is The Edwardians by Vita Sackville-West, and this is a good time for sure. Having visited Knoll, I can appreciate this book so much more because it is all about her reflecting on her childhood and her experiences and criticising the Edwardian, aristocracy. Highly recommend. Dracula is the best vampire novel. The group of heroes gathering to sort of solve the big crisis that's going on is a trope for a reason, and I think Dracula does it really well. All the characters are great. I really like the way that it's told in, letters and diary entries. It's really unique and close to God tier, but not quite. This is just where I'm putting all of Tolstoy's short stories because he's an amazing writer. He was, he wrote for The Everyman. All of his short stories are great, and again, just not quite God tier. Great Expectations, all about what makes a gentleman, money and class and how you're born or who you are as a person, which annoyingly, again, we're still having to, deal with snobbery and all that kind of thing in 2022. Dickens is an amazing writer and Pip is a great protagonist. Again, this might actually be God tier. I might have to reread it and see because I've been itching to reread this for a while actually. Next is Resurrection, which is Tolstoy. This novel's all about remorse and guilt, and a prostitute is on trial, wrongly accused, and the main character basically has to reckon with the fact that if it wasn't for him, she wouldn't be in this situation. And you follow them both as he tries to make amends, and it's reflective like Tolstoy's other writing. The writing is great. Again, not quite God tier. Next is Lord of the Flies. I think most people in the UK, around my age have read this in school. And if you haven't, do. The idea of what children would do if they were marooned on a desert island with, you know, no hope of escape is just an amazing premise. Next is Howard's End, more E.M. Forster. Again, this is another one sort of about class and money and the things that, you know, sort of the economic storms that rich people can weather that, you know, poor people and the middle classes can't weather. This very much focuses on a couple of families and the characters are great. Again, the film's really good. I think this is great, but, you know, it's no Room with a View, which I will talk about in a bit. Next is The Bell Jar, which I have my review for this, but I don't remember anything about, and it's only in a good time because I have evidence of how much I enjoyed this book at the time, and there's not much to say about it other than it's amazing. Read it. It's an experience that everybody needs to have. The next is The Age of Innocence, the best Edith Wharton novel, in my opinion. This one is about infidelity and sort of the brazenness of a woman who sort of wants to live life on her own terms and, you know, duty versus passion, all of this kind of thing. The main character has to decide, you know, what he values. And Siddhartha is next. This focuses on a man and his spiritual journey during sort of the time of the Buddha. It's all about the search for enlightenment and makes you think a lot, and in an engaging way you won't get bored. Slaughterhouse 5 is next, and this is an anti-war book which sort of focuses on the bombing of Dresden in the Second World War by the British and the Americans. Really top-notch writing. It made such a deep impression on me when I read it, and it's something that I think everybody should read, especially now. It's a really pertinent time to read it right now. We have 2 George Smiley novels now. The first is Call for the Dead, which is the first novel which you are introduced to George Smiley as a character, the circus, the world of espionage, that kind of thing. It's just so good. It's just such a great introduction. You know, agents, double, triple agents, and, you know, the different interactions between, you know, the UK and the Soviet Union and East and West Germany and the US, and of course there's a dead body that needs to be figured out and everything, and George Smiley is just on that. And the second is The Spy Who Came In From the Cold. This is a Smiley novel, he's in it, but he's not the main protagonist. There's somebody else who sort of ends up in East Germany to try and sort of take down the East German intelligence service. Just great stuff. Finally, on to God Tier. I kind of feel like I don't need to explain this. It is just the cream of the crop, the best classics that I've ever read. First is the best Jane Austen novel, and it is Emma. Emma is the best Jane Austen protagonist, for sure. I'd say one of the best protagonists of all time. The romance is a bit questionable in this because of, you know, age gaps and how they know each other, but the bond between them and the love between them is so genuine, and it's just so lovely to read. And the rest of the characters in this are just a real collection, and chef's kiss. And of course the plot is great. Everyone loves to see a know-it-all character humbled, so universally satisfying, I think. Next is A Room with a View. E.M. Forster, just yes, I love this. The descriptions of Florence were beautiful, and it takes place between Florence and the UK, so you kind of see both. I think the 1900s, that decade, is really underrated, and I want to read more books set in that period. Also watch the film, it's amazing. Helena Bonham Carter, baby Helena Bonham Carter is just terrific. Next is I Capture the Castle. I have a really strong bond with this book, and I think it comes from the fact that I really loved the film. I watched it as a child and then I read the book, and the main family in this book are all interesting in their own ways, and you get to see all the different kinds of love and romance, and honestly the best relationships were the ones between the family members. Cassandra's the main character, between, you know, Cassandra and her father and her sister. Just truly familial relationships are the heart of this novel. Next is Frankenstein. Mary Shelley is a genius writer, and there is so much more to Frankenstein than people think and that you see in pop culture. I could, rave about this all day. It's an essential read about, what makes you human, what makes you evil. Next is not entirely unexpected. The Tenant of Welfare Hall, the best Bronte novel, hands down, deals with the plight of married women and mothers and their legal status when it, comes to being their own person and custody of their children. And also questioning the appeal and rehabilitation of toxic men, because you will not catch a Mr. Rochester in this novel, I'm telling you that. Helen Graham is such an inspiration also, just as a heroine. Yeah, amazing. I will not stop until everyone that I meet has read it, so I'm sorry, you just have to. And next is War and Peace. Yes, I have read War and Peace all the way through. It took me a while, but I did it. Because I grew up on listening to the BBC adaptation of War and Peace. I loved it. I thought it was really good. Again, Simon Russell Beale. Simon Russell Beale narrated my childhood, I think. He was just always in my ear. Yeah, the characters are brilliant. The plotting is really nice. It's sort of this perfect blend of the nice narrative and plot and the characters you love, and you also get a lot of sort of historical, you get accounts of the battles, with the characters who are in, but you also get some omniscient narration in it too, which was really interesting. So yeah, I love this. I think, yeah, everyone needs to read it. It's actually not as hard to get through as you think. It's not, it's very engaging. It's a quick read for how long it is, if that makes sense. So you'll plow through it. It just will take you a quick minute. I cannot speak more highly of To Kill a Mockingbird. From Scout to Atticus, just there's some great characters in this book. We're going to ignore the sequel. In this household, we pretend that the sequel never happened and that To Kill a Mockingbird is the only book with these characters in it, because it is social commentary and all of that kind of thing done really well. And of course, people love it for a reason. It is the opposite of overhyped. No, that's not true. It's not underhyped. It is the appropriate amount of hyped. Next is sort of the Jeeves and Worcester novels. I'm putting them all together because, I've read loads of them. Hilarious. It's not relatably funny, but it's like, it's like Miranda. You're sort of laughing at the ridiculous situations that people are in, and the writing just pulls it off so well. It's funny to laugh at rich posh people is what I realised through reading this. Brits should know it is apparently how we ended up with our Prime Minister. So next is Lord of the Rings. I don't really need to say anything about Lord of the Rings. It is amazing. The writing, the characters, the plot, the world building, it is the creme de la creme of fantasy. It is the top. I will not take any Lord of the Rings slander at all. So yeah. Again, it's something that I feel like is quite a quick read, but it's an investment of time. Next is Wuthering Heights. This is intense and emotional and wild and turbulent and just so good. The top of the list of classics that are must read for everyone. It is just, none of these relationships are healthy and none of these family dynamics are good. It's all so toxic, but it is just so good to read. And yeah, you can't don't take away any advice from this book, but it's amazing. My Hemingway in the God tier is A Movable Feast, which is sort of the fictionalized, he's basically bringing his past to life in a series of sort of vignettes. His friendships, his, work, his living in Paris, and as a young man, it's so good. You've got to read it in spring or summer. It is vibes, Next is Anna Karenina, and the book is way better than any film. It just is. Tolstoy always is, in my opinion, I think. It's just too much to put on screen, My favourite storyline is Levin and his point of view, as opposed to the sort of main doomed romance in this. The middle bit that some people don't like, I love. I love the reflectiveness that you get with Tolstoy's writing, and especially his autobiographical characters like Levin. It's just very engrossing, and yeah, there's something for everyone, I think, in this, which is what makes it so great. Next is Animal Farm and the ultimate allegory for totalitarianism. That took me a couple of tries. There are always people who will, seek out power and take it for themselves and to try and limit people's freedoms. But, still relevant today, again, sadly. But this book is amazing. And talking animals are always fun to read. I mean, come on. Next is 1984, which is just the best dystopian novel. It just is. A world of state control and fake news and suppression of the rights of the individual and freedom. Perfect for me, obviously. This novel is just, evidence for the need to be able to speak the truth to power, no matter the consequences. Within reason, obviously. Especially relevant right now, given everything that's going on the other side of the continent. And finally, I promise this is the last book that I'm going to talk about, and it's The Picture of Dorian Gray. Oscar Wilde, again, is up there with, one of my favourite writers. He's just incredible. This novel is just incredibly written, and it is partially autobiographical because he said that Basil is who he thinks he is, Henry is who sort of people make him out to be, and Dorian is sort of who he wants to be. Moral disintegration and an examination of society's obsession with youth and beauty, and yes, please. We've all heard about The Painting in the Attic, even if you've not read the book, but yeah, definitely worth it. So that was my mouth of a video. Thank you for watching. Thank you for sticking with me. I hope believe you made it to the end. Do give this a like if you enjoyed it, and I make videos about books, history, personality, all sorts. So do check them out and subscribe if you would like to. I don't really have much more to say. I'm all tapped out. I feel like my throat's about to give out. So yeah. But do let me know what your favourite God tier classics are. If I haven't read them, bully me into reading them. Yeah. Happy reading.